Welcome to Oddball. I'm Amin and Izzy. That's Izzy Gutierrez wearing the largest headphones known to man. Reminder that today's episode is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours.
I got big ears.
Is that why? Okay. We're in the middle of the playoffs and everyone's so excited about game one and game two and who's up and whatever. But there's some people who had seasons that weren't so great. And some might say some folks over there in some pretty deep shiitake mushrooms, let's call them. How about that? And the Sixers in that group, the Suns and the Mavs in that group. So welcome to a segment we like to call Deep Shit. That's right. We're measuring, we're going to measure just how things are for these guys using a poop emoji scale of sadness. It goes from ankle deep to knee deep, waist deep, chest deep, neck deep. And when you're buried in it, that's next level. So first things first, Izzy, we did it the right way. We went to our partners at DraftKings. We said, hey, what was the preseason win total for these teams that we predicted? And then we'll compare with what actually happened. So we'll start with the Dallas Mavericks. Opening night, their win total was projected to be 50.5 wins. And there you go. The face of the Dallas Mavericks, Nico Harrison, the general manager who doubles and triples down every time he gets an opportunity on what he did. All right. They actually won 39 wins, Izzy. So they had a lot of bad quotes this year, most of them from Nico, but this sums up the cluelessness of the front office as well as anything. Quote, it happens, right? Trades happen. This won't be the last trade. Someone compared it to Babe Ruth, which is kind of cool. That's from Jason Kidd on April 9th. You know what? I'm not mad at that quote from Coach Kidd, man.
I actually hadn't heard that quote until just now. Yeah. And holy shit, speaking of deep, does he know that they talked about that Babe Ruth trade for 100 years? It was that bad? Like there was an entire curse about it? That's not cool. You're going to be dead and they'll still talk about it.
Izzy, it's kind of cool. They're talking about you, man. Think about it. You're always in the news cycle no matter what happens. Even if you make it to the World Series, even if a ball goes between your legs in the World Series, you should have clinched in the game 6. You don't, and you end up losing game 7. We're going to talk about this dude that was dead 100 years ago.
Does Nico not understand? Has he never heard of Steve Bartman? Like, you don't want to be associated with something for so long, even after you've passed. But
you seen how many tickets they sell in Chicago? People are coming to that ballpark left and right. You know why? Because of the Billy Goat. Yes.
Well, by the way, Nico's feel like he's all in my space here. It's pretty fitting that it looks like he's already stepping in because he has stepped in it, number one, with the trade and then discussing it in a private meeting with journalists, which is really weird. How deep is he in it, though? Because not just the whole defense wins championships memes, because he's up, in his neck or above with that. But how deep is he in it?
Okay, I can only explain it to you like this. There's a movie that just came out. It's called Sinners. Ryan Coogler directed it, and I watched this great informative video by Ryan Coogler about the difference in different film formats because he shot it in film. He told us the difference between 8mm, 35mm, 70mm, IMAX, et cetera, and he said also, so when you're watching it in an IMAX theater, it's bigger, right? So the screen is bigger. Like the thing, it's not just things are bigger. There are things that you can see on an IMAX screen that you cannot see on a regular movie screen or at your home television screen. I feel like I need an IMAX camera to show the vastness of sky above me because that's how deep the shit is. It's way, way, way above Nico's
You've
head.
already drowned in it, and there's also been an explosion, so there's just like raining poop everywhere on top of you, which you can't even feel.
I can see the little, right here, the little line of poop right there. That's too close. Too close. Yes, there you go. It's gotta be like Mariana Trench, right? Like the deepest part of the ocean. Now imagine the ocean, instead of full of water, was full of shit. That's where Nico Harrison is.
Why?
Why
now
not?
That you've described it so beautifully, and we're all in the same situation, trying to picture ourselves climbing out of a pool of poop. Why?
How much time do we have? I mean, like it's every bit of it. Look, Tim McMahon came out with a very well reported, a very detailed piece on it on ESPN.com on Monday, where he talks about this all started when they fired Casey Smith, the longtime athletic trainer and very trusted organization member in Dallas. They fired him after they came back from the Dirk Nowitzki Hall of Fame trip. in 2023. So it's just like all of this is self-inflicted.
It seems like a parody, right? It seems like they're trying to do everything to you talk about the trade. You have the embarrassing, defense wins championships over and over again mantra that you keep using. You've got luminaries, people who have been obviously Dirk Nowitzki sort of kind of reportedly necessarily separating himself a little bit, not loving what he sees from them. You've got Mark Cuban, who was the face of that franchise for so long, pretty much embarrassed by what they're doing. It doesn't seem, I've never seen an organization do this to itself so thoroughly and in such a short period of time to where the recovery has to be instant, and they're not set up for that, especially because of Kyrie's injury.
So what the reporting from McMahon is Casey Smith was let go in part because he was a guy that had a lot of power and influence in the organization, and he was especially close to Luka Doncic, right? And Luka kind of inherited that relationship with Casey from Dirk. So all of these things, according to reporting, kind of threatened Nico's control of the organization. And so it stands to reason why you see all of these moves, the letting go of Casey Smith, the letting go of the manual therapist, and the strength and conditioning coach, and letting go of all these surrogates in the organization who are looked at as people who enabled, I'm using air quotes, enabled Luka Doncic. And then the last domino is to get rid of Luka himself. He wanted to make this organization in his image. You're welcome. Congratulations, you did.
I mean, who is Nico Harrison really to have an organization built around his image? It's kind of narcissistic, if you ask me. I get that, but like I look at successful teams all across the league, and I don't think of their GM first. Like for him to say it's something built around his image is kind of strange. I'm curious though, like how quickly can they recover? Like they're in this, but is there a lifeboat on the way?
I mean, the lifeboat in the short term is Kyrie comes back healthy. Everyone manages to be healthy somewhat, somehow, some way, and they win, and maybe they win a championship. I don't think that digs them out of the though.
So salary-wise, they're 190 committed already, 190 million committed for next season. It doesn't feel like there's just an available move out there, but they do have a couple of movable pieces, maybe a big that they have maybe a few of that they can move on from. Like if there is a strong, let's say, small forward you can slide in there, doesn't that seem like a decent squad?
Izzy, let's assume, I'll tell you right now, hey man, just got out of the DeLorean. The Mavs win the 2026 NBA championship. Do you think all is forgiven in Dallas for Nico Harrison? You think my work here is done?
Well, I feel like we've had this conversation after the trade. Yeah, I think if they get a championship next year and they look back and be like, man, Dirk got us one, but those are 20 struggling years. Like we got to the top, we failed, we were chokers, and then we finally did it in a surprise. I'll take this one cooked up, whatever. Anthony Davis, not really our guy, but I'll take a championship.
I'm not asking you whether you take it. I'm asking you, do you think all is forgiven for Nico Harrison in Dallas if they win a championship next year?
I think more is forgiven, yes. And I think the jury is then still out and staring at Luka out west and saying, hey, if he actually doesn't win anything and becomes what Nico says he's going to become, then yeah, I think all is forgiven with Nico.
I think the only point that happens is long after Nico Harrison is gone. He might have the ability to look back and say, I was right. But I don't think that'll happen as long as he's employed. Not because as long as he's employed, however long that is, because I don't think he's going to be employed long enough to see him win that argument. Okay. All right, we spent a lot of time on the Dallas Mavericks. Surely there's not another team that can be this deep in the shit, right?
Oh, man, it's the Philadelphia 76ers. You would argue probably the second deep-iest team, I would say, in the league this year. They opened the win total of 51.5, which seemed like a decent number. Actual wins, 24. Embarrassing. Tyrese Maxey had this quote in his exit interview. He said, the name's on paper. It looks nice. It does. There was some stretches where we all played and looked really good. Do they still look nice on paper?
On paper, sure. They look great. Love this roster, right? Problem is, the roster ain't on paper. Roster's out on the floor, and typically the roster wasn't out on the floor. Typically the roster was in the ICU somewhere, rehabbing a variety of injuries. Kind of like the Mavericks. Like if everyone's healthy, they could be good. And if they're good, I see as an easier way of digging out of this. But unlike the Mavericks, I think it's even a higher risk of like, that's not going to happen just because I don't trust any of these guys. The way I described it before the season, Izzy, is the Clippers chose to hedge their bets. Harden is always healthy. Kawhi's always hurt. Let me supplement my always hurt superstar with someone who's always available. And then when we get to the playoffs, if they're both healthy, we'll be great. The Sixers went to the parlay. My guy's always hurt. Let me get another guy who's always hurt. And if they both hit at the same time, it'll be awesome. But chances are,
which is why my answer to this, and this is why I would say they're at least waist deep in it right now, because one, you've got to cross your fingers and hope that this is the off season and the proper, medical care that Joel gets that has him ready for a full season, which, I mean, I'm not going to bet on that if I could. The other, but if you want to assume that he's going to be as healthy as he's ever been, you can't do what you're saying again. So you've got to find a trade partner for Paul George. You've got to find, whether it be you take back something that's not quite as attractive, but it fits better. I think you have to do that. And frankly, and I know this is a little early because I'm not giving up on my Rockets here, but I think that's a good trade partner. Like if you look at the Rockets and say, hey, if you bring me back Fred VanVleet and somebody else, right? Because Fred's making about $40 million this year. So you're almost lined up there. I think you can get, and with Houston, that gives them a half court, scorer that they can go to that's on the perimeter. So I feel like that's a potential trade partner. So I think if you look around, you do still have places you can put Paul George. So I don't think it's dire for this team, but you're banking on the same thing. It's Joel Embiid. Can you be healthy? I have no idea.
And Paul George too. I mean, like those guys hand in hand and all that. And to me, I think that's the part. It's like, fool me one time, shame on you. Fool me two times, put the blame on you. Fool me three times, the peace sign. Load the shit or make it rain on you. And that's what's happening here, right? It's like, at this point, does anyone want to give, I'm not even going to say equal value, fair value for any of these players outside of maybe Tyrese Maxey, right? The answer is probably not. And that's why I'm going, this is at least chest deep. Get me a little bit more. Again, I'm not going neck deep because if they're healthy, then you get out of shit pretty quickly. But it's like the if of all those guys with all those injury concerns being healthy makes me a little skeptical.
Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me chicken with rice. That's the saying, right?
Sure, why not?
Let's go on to the Suns, though.
Yeah, well, one more. Let's have one more. Let's go to my adopted hometown, Phoenix, Arizona. The Suns, the opening win total was 46.5 wins. And I was like, that's low.
Right.
And the Suns said, hold my beer, and promptly won more than 10 games less than that. They actually ended up with 36 wins. They underperformed so bad that they fired Coach Bood. And Matt Ishbia thinks the team should have won more. He said, quote, there's a lot of reasons why Coach Bood is not here. I'm not going to get into all those reasons, but definitely believe we should have won a lot more games and been a lot more competitive during those games as well. That was Matt Ishbia on April 18th. So Izzy, before we get into the details, where on the meter, or the odometer, I should say, are the Suns?
I mean, I think it starts at the chest just because of they've already experienced it. They've been chest deep in it all season long. Like to not make the play in is an embarrassment as an organization. And Ishbia feels it as this, proud new owner. I think the interesting thing is they're already, like I said, they've already been in it. So now it's just a matter of how do they get themselves out of it? Is it a full cleanse where they're just going to get rid of everything that they've got and said, hey, we're going to get a lot back from this. We're going to clean up or refill that whole draft situation that we gave away all our draft picks and we'll be good in a couple of years. Or if they try to go patchwork and try to, hey, we'll get rid of Kevin Durant, but we can still win with Booker and Beal, then they're just going to be swimming in it for another year or so. So to me, it's just a matter of they've already done the worst part of this. We already know Kevin Durant reportedly is going to, they're going to work with him on a way out. So they're sort of cleaning the deck, if you will, of some of the they already swam in.
Give me the right up to under Book's chin. Not quite covering his face. He can still breathe. He can still get the hamster bottle of water to drink from. But the is right up here. Because number one, you have this Durant situation where you try to trade him and you fail, right? And now it's this awkward thing. You got to move him, but he's only got a year left on his deal. So whoever's acquired him is like, I'm not going to give up that much for him because, like, man, like, what if he leaves or whatever? You've got all these complications right there, right? Beal's deal is unmovable, right? Despite I think he could still be a very good contributing player on a lot of teams at that price tag. No, everyone's saying no, thank you. And so now you're put in this weird position where you've got this young superstar in Devin Booker, and you got to ask yourself the question: is my way out of this by trading Devin Booker and getting out of here? Which to me is kind of going like Andy Dufresne. The way out of this is to dig deeper into the and come up at the other side in China or something like that. And like, oh, finally I'm free. That's not fun. I mean, it might be the only way out, but it's not fun. That's why I think they're in it deep.
Not gonna lie, I was gonna make that reference earlier, but I could not pull the name Andy Dufresne out of my brain. I could not remember it.
You need to watch more TNT. Just leave it on after the playoffs are over.
That's true. It is on all the time. It is crazy, though. They're like $218 million in salary for 25-26 already, second aproning. So they are very limited on how they can make all these moves. But again, they've known that this whole year. So they've been
the most expensive
all year long.
The most expensive storm in the history of the NBA.
All right. Well, let's take a break. We got 3 more teams to swim through the poop with. I'm sure you've been enjoying this. Welcome back to Oddball. Amin and I have been talking about teams that are kind of up to here in some, smelly stuff. And normally those teams were playoff teams. We're not playoff teams, rather. But one of them is. It's the Memphis Grizzlies. And although based on that game 1, I don't think they know that they're in the playoffs because they got blown out by Oklahoma City. There's this one quote from Jaren Jackson Jr. that I just want to dive into right off the top, where he said, "It could be worse. We could always be homeless." And man, if I'm a homeless person, an unhoused person, excuse me, I'm standing up on the street where I normally am, and I'm saying, don't bring me into this conversation, man. Don't compare me to you because that was god awful and you need to be criticized as much as possible for it. How deep in it are they when clearly they aren't really a playoff team? And even though they were number 2 at some point during the regular season this year, you've got a star in Ja Morant who doesn't seem to want to be there and is like anti-NBA. And yeah, they're a small market team. It doesn't feel like there's a clear recovery here. They've got a new coach now, and it just seems things are in shambles. Seems like they're at least waist deep in it here.
Yeah, first of all, if I were an unhoused gentleman, Izzy, I'd be standing outside of 7-Eleven waiting to bum a cigarette and wondering whether I'm going to get referenced on the award-winning podcast Cinephobe, wherever you get podcasts.
Free.
But I think the question I ask, if you're in Memphis, right, if we were trying to determine the level of human excrement that they're in, had Taylor Jenkins not gotten fired a couple weeks ago, would they even be on this list? Even with that massive loss to Oklahoma City, would they even be on this list? The reason why they're on this list is because they have exhibited the behaviors of somewhere unstable. You fired the best coach in franchise history with weeks to go in the season, blamed a system switch on him, even though you dictated system switch onto him by making him inherit new assistant coaches, then hand over the controls to one of these assistant coaches, who then promptly starts doing things that Taylor Jenkins did before you force him to switch a system, somehow putting that as success. You're forcing him to play a guy in Zach Edey, who, by the way, looked completely lost. I thought he looked bad against Golden State, and Oklahoma City said, hold my beer. And so all of these things, like Dallas, like Nico Harrison, seem really self-inflicted. The good news is they still have a good roster. And I think, maybe with time and a little bit more rind to him, maybe Thomas Isolo can be the guy that leads them forward. Maybe not. Maybe he's just an interim and we find a new coach this offseason. Maybe it's Michael Malone for all I know, right?
Here's what I'd say. He's a really good coach. Here's what I think is potentially good for the Memphis here and how you can try to keep Ja happy, because he's signed through 2028. So there's a couple more seasons where you're just like, all right, we're not going to move on from you here just yet. I think you've got a player in Desmond Bane who's, again, he's signed through 2029, but it's actually a reasonable number. Like next year, it's 36 million. And he's a guy that can give you 20, 25 points a game. So I still think he's an attractive trade piece. You try to, maybe Isalo is not the answer. Maybe you move on from a head coach and you try to convince Ja, hey, listen, you and Jaren Jackson were great. We're going to get you a better backcourt partner than Desmond, somebody who sort of fits or complements you a little bit better. And let's see where we go. And that pushes the poop down to maybe knee level.
I'm at knee level, although I would say, based on everything that's happened, maybe Ja's the one that goes and Bane's the one that stays. Even though Bane, not based on that game last night, he was neck deep by himself.
If you can get a haul for Ja Morant, yes, but I think there are some GMs that are going to question him.
Nah, I don't think so. I think they think, if we had him, things would be different. Okay. All right, next up, we go a little bit south of Memphis, a little bit southeast of Memphis, and we go to Atlanta. The Hawks. And Trae Young has won 2 playoff series in 7 years, and they both happened in the same year. That was the COVID-shortened year, 2021. Team has never gone more than 4 games above 500 in the entire time. So, Izzy, as they got knocked out on Friday night in overtime to the Miami Heat, much to the delight of Jonathan Zaslow, where do you put the shotometer for the Atlanta Hawks?
I mean, this is another one of those situations where they've been going through it for actually more than just 1 year. They've been going through it for a few years, trying to figure out exactly what they have, trying to redo the front office, this, and that. Like, they are not in terrible shape for next year. Trae Young makes $45 million, but nobody else on the roster makes more than, 30 for Jalen Johnson. But outside of that, like $15 million. They're okay in terms of flexibility. They just need to make a decision on Trae Young. And while I think for them, it seems like an easy decision to move on from him, this is a guy who's never had an all-star teammate. And so you don't really know what this team could look like if you built around him properly. I just think that they're fed up. It's a little bit, the patience has run out. We've seen enough and they want to move on, especially in other people from like Trae's draft class who have succeeded and done pretty well. So I don't think they're that deep in it. It's just a matter of whether you consider having to fully rebuild and being in position to do it. Is that deep in it? Or is that just, we've cycled out of this, this potential winning window. Let's go to the next one.
To be fair, DeJounte Murray was an all-star prior to coming to Atlanta. And it's not like he's Russell Westbrook where it's like, well, those days are long behind him. So technically, Trae had an all-star teammate. He just couldn't get him to the all-star game once they played.
If you asked me to pick the least all-star of all-stars for the last 5 years, it might have been DeJounte Murray.
Really? I would have gone Zach LaVine. But look,
on the next oddball.
I think Atlanta, I'm not going to say landed on the formula, but they've gotten closer to the formula this year than they've have in the last 5 years, which is we need to be an elite defensive team. And Trae is going to allowed to do the offensive things that help us win games. And whether he's efficient or not is kind of less important than are we supplementing him with the correct amount of defense. And I think they did that. And I think offensively, they started to figure out, how can we use Jalen Johnson, and who looked like he could have been that all-star teammate in real time that Trae needed. And instead, Jalen Johnson gets hurt, and then it's kind of the similar type of Atlanta Hawks season. So
if I just painted this to you, let's say that you keep Trae Young, you've got Okongwu, you've got Reece Arche, you've got Dyson Daniels, and you've got a healthy Jalen Johnson as a starting point, and you still have some maneuverability under that. Yes. I would say they're not that deep in it.
Yeah, I would say probably about knee deep, like the Grizzlies. Like it's a situation where, all right, wasn't ideal what happened this year, but I'm not looking at massive issues down the line that you're facing like I am with some of these other teams.
All right, well, it's time for Iciest Play of the Week. Iciest Play of the Week brought to you by Jägermeister. We've got 2 nominations this week, Amin, both from Sunday and both featuring unique leg kicks.
Okay.
We have Ant-Man crossing over Rui Hachimura, who ended up doing a little, what is that, an ab routine on the ground there. And then you've got Steph Curry. This is after he already released the ball in one of the most difficult looking shots you could ever think of. And he's got a crazy Rockettes kick at the end of it just for flair.
Steph looks like he just finished punting a football, right?
Yeah.
This is the punter after, like right here, right as the heat is on him. Meanwhile,
Hachimura.
Rui looks like he's doing that break dance where it's like, you know what I'm talking about? Like that break dance move.
Yeah, I do know that one. So Kevin Harlan called Steph shot geometrically impossible. So which one do you want to take?
It was, but I've seen Steph do that 8 billion times. I've seen him do it like
so we're taking Ant-Mans. Iciest Play of the Week presented by Jägermeister. Serve it cold or don't serve it at all. Jägermeister. Damn, that's cold. For more, visit Jägermeister.com. Drink responsibly.